Ladies and gentlemen, every man, no matter how strong he may appear, has his weaknesses. Beneath that exterior, there's a vulnerability that not everyone sees. Understanding these vulnerabilities can shift the dynamics in any relationship, giving you the power to connect on a deeper level. So, let's dive into what you need to know. One of the most prominent aspects of a man's inner world is his ego. It's the armor he wears in front of the world, the shield that makes him feel invincible. But the truth is that ego is fragile. It's easily bruised by the smallest of challenges. Men need respect, and they need it constantly. The moment their pride is threatened, you'll see a change. The way to manage this is not to attack it, but to subtly acknowledge their strength. When they feel respected for who they are, they stand tall. If you learn how to give him that respect at the right moment, you'll witness him open up in ways you never expected. But remember, there's a balance. Overdo it, and it might backfire. The key is to make him feel like the man he wants to be without feeding into a false sense of superiority. Another aspect that you must be aware of is his deep need for validation. No matter how successful a man is or how confident he seems, there's always a part of him that wonders if it's enough. Whether it's in his work or personal life, he's constantly looking for someone to affirm his efforts. And while he may never admit it, he craves acknowledgement. Think about it. How often does he boast about a small success? How often he wants someone to recognize that he's doing well? If you learn to praise his achievements, big or small, you'll start to notice a shift in how he views you. Your words will become a source of encouragement, and he'll be more willing to make sure you're included in his journey. But don't overdo it. If he feels like you're praising him just to gain something, it will lose its value. The trick is in making him feel like his worth is recognized without suffocating him. Men are also deeply afraid of rejection. It's not just about romantic relationships. It applies to every area of their lives. Whether he's proposing an idea in a meeting or asking for your time, the fear of rejection runs deep. It chips away at his confidence, making him second-guess every move he makes. This is where you hold power. By giving him the reassurance he needs, you strengthen his sense of self-worth. Make him feel wanted, without being overly clingy. Show him that his presence in your life is significant. He'll want to stay around because he feels like you're not just tolerating him, you're appreciating him. But remember, a man who feels rejected can become distant. So keep the connection alive by letting him know that he's your choice without forcing him to feel that pressure. When you make him feel needed, you'll notice his energy shifting toward you. Next comes the issue of control. Men like to feel like they're in charge, whether it's in their career or their personal lives. Losing control is one of their greatest fears. When things begin to slip through their fingers, they panic. But here's the twist. You don't need to take that control from him to get what you want. Let him believe he's in charge. Let him feel like he's calling the shots. But here's the catch. By doing so, you're actually guiding him in your direction. There's power in making him think he's in control when in reality, you're the one gently steering the ship. But tread carefully. Too much manipulation can backfire. It's about subtle influence, not force. Even the most accomplished men are plagued by insecurity about their success. While they may walk around like they've got it all together, deep down, they fear that it's all an illusion. They worry about losing their position or being exposed as a fraud. That's why praise and acknowledgement are crucial, but they must be sincere. If you want to make him feel secure, acknowledge his accomplishments, but also ground him in the present. He doesn't want to feel like he's constantly fighting for his place. Let him know you appreciate him, not just for what he does, but for who he is. Show him that you see beyond his achievements and appreciate his essence. This helps him feel safe, knowing that your connection isn't based solely on what he brings to the table, but also on his character. Lastly, there's his emotional vulnerability. Men are often taught to suppress their emotions. Society tells them to man up and hide their feelings, and this leads to them bottling up their true selves. But underneath that hardened exterior, there's a man who craves emotional intimacy just as much as anyone else. The difference is, he needs someone who understands him without forcing him to speak. It's in those quiet moments, those soft exchanges, that you'll find the deepest connection. When you let him open up in his own time, you're allowing him to show you a side of himself he hides from the world. Don't push him too hard, just be present. Let him know it's safe to be vulnerable around you. By doing so, you build a bond that's unbreakable, a connection that goes far beyond the surface. So, while a man may try to project an image of strength, beneath the surface, he's navigating these vulnerabilities every day. When you understand these weaknesses, you hold the power to shape the relationship in a way that brings out the best in him. Every man, no matter how self-assured he seems, has an unspoken need that drives him: validation. You might think a confident man doesn't care for your opinion, but deep down, he's always seeking recognition for his efforts, his choices, and even his very existence. Validation is a core emotional need that many men struggle with, yet they rarely admit it. He might tell you that he doesn't need anyone's approval, but believe me, he does. Every small success, every little victory, he wants someone to notice, to see him as more than just a man going through the motions of life. He wants to be seen for his talents, his hard work, and his achievements. This need for validation is not about ego. It's about wanting to know that what he does matters to you. No matter how successful a man is, he's never fully immune to the fear that his achievements may go unnoticed or unappreciated. He might not ask for your praise directly, but he'll pay attention to how you respond to his victories. When you take the time to acknowledge his efforts, whether it's for something big or small, you give him a sense of accomplishment that no one else can provide. The emotional payoff for him is more than just a pat on the back. It's reassurance that he's worth something to you. When a man accomplishes something, no matter how minor, and you respond with genuine praise, you'll notice a shift in his demeanor. He lights up. You may think it's something trivial, but to him, it's a validation that his place in your world is valuable. He'll remember those moments when you genuinely recognized him. The key here is authenticity. He can tell when praise is empty, when it's said just to win favor. It needs to come from a place of sincerity. That's when the connection becomes real and his guard comes down. Over time, these small acts of acknowledgement create a stronger bond, one that makes him more committed to you and your relationship. But validation is a delicate dance. Give him too much, and it may feel patronizing. Give him too little, and he'll start questioning whether you even care about his worth. There's a balance that needs to be maintained. Men are complex beings, and while they crave recognition, they don't want to be smothered by it. They want their efforts to be seen and valued, but they also want to feel like they earned it. This is where the fine line lies. If you want to truly make him feel validated, take the time to recognize the effort he puts into the relationship. Compliment him for being the man you admire, not just for the things he does, but for the person he is. The thing with men is that they often fear vulnerability. They're conditioned to believe that showing emotion is a sign of weakness. However, when you validate him, you give him the safe space to drop his walls, even if just for a moment. He starts to feel like he's not just loved for the roles he plays in life, provider, protector, partner, but also for his individuality. That's a powerful emotional shift, one that will foster trust and deepen intimacy in ways that can't be easily replicated. Think about it. How often do men go through their lives without receiving a meaningful acknowledgement of their efforts? How often do they silently carry the weight of their insecurities, wondering if they are truly valued? When you become the source of validation for him, you provide more than just praise, you provide comfort. You give him the assurance he doesn't even realize he needs. And when a man feels secure in his worth, he becomes more open, more vulnerable, and more committed. This, in turn, strengthens your relationship, creating a dynamic where both of you feel emotionally supported and cherished. However, this need for validation is not a weakness, it's a human need. Everyone wants to feel seen, and men are no different. It's easy to dismiss his need for recognition as an ego trip, but it's so much more than that. It's about connection. It's about belonging. It's about feeling that the effort he's put into the world, his job or his relationships, matters to someone who truly cares. And when he knows that his place in your life is solid, he will show up more fully for you in return. But beware of the trap of conditional validation. Men don't want to feel like they only have worth when they perform a certain way or achieve a specific goal. The best kind of validation is the kind that's unconditional, the kind that tells him, I see you, I appreciate you for who you are, not just what you do. That's the sweet spot, the place where you move beyond surface level interactions and tap into something deeper. It's a place where trust and love thrive. So, while a man may try to act like he doesn't need validation, the truth is, he does. He's just waiting for the right person to recognize the value he brings to the table. And when that person is you, the bond grows stronger and the connection becomes unbreakable. When you make him feel truly seen and valued, you unlock a level of intimacy that's hard to beat. There's a powerful, unspoken truth that every man carries within him, no matter how confident he appears to be. Beneath a tough exterior, there's a deep-seated fear of rejection that gnaws at him, often silently but intensely. This fear is not just about relationships. It permeates every aspect of his life, from his career to his personal endeavors. The truth is, men live with the constant anxiety of being rejected, whether it's by the people they care about, the opportunities they strive for, or even the world in general. While men often mask this fear with bravado and pride, it's a vulnerability that many of them are desperately trying to protect. The fear of rejection is so powerful because it attacks the core of who a man is. It makes him question his worth, his value, and his place in the world. For a man, rejection can feel like a crushing blow to his sense of identity, shaking his confidence to the core. It's not just about being told no. It's about the feeling of being unseen, unappreciated, and not enough. This fear is more than a simple emotional response. It's a core human instinct that drives how he interacts with others, how he handles challenges, and how he navigates relationships. This fear also manifests itself in subtle ways. He might hesitate to open up to you or to show his true feelings because he worries you'll reject him. In fact, a man's hesitance to express vulnerability often comes from this fear of rejection. He might avoid being vulnerable because he's afraid that exposing his soft side will make him seem weak, or worse, unworthy. He doesn't want to take the risk of showing too much because, deep down, he fears that if he does, you might walk away. It's this internal battle, the desire to connect and open up versus the fear of being rejected, that many men face daily. The reality is, rejection is more than just a fear. It's a powerful motivator. Men often work harder, push further, and strive for perfection because they're terrified of the possibility of being rejected. They put up a facade of indifference or confidence, but underneath it all, they are deeply invested in how others perceive them. They want to be admired, respected, and accepted, not just for what they do, but for who they are. Rejection feels like a threat to their very sense of self. When they feel rejected, it's not just an emotional setback, it's an assault on their identity. If you want to understand how to handle this fear, you need to understand that it's not something easily conquered. It's ingrained deeply within him, and often it takes time for a man to come to terms with it. He needs to feel accepted for who he is, flaws and all. He doesn't want to feel like he has to constantly prove himself, but at the same time, he's scared that if he doesn't show enough, you'll walk away. This creates a delicate balance between giving him the space to be himself without feeling judged and ensuring he feels valued for his authentic self. When you can make him feel secure, free from the threat of rejection, something incredible happens. He opens up. He becomes more vulnerable, more willing to share his innermost thoughts, fears, and desires. But this takes trust, not just from him, but also from you. He needs to know that you see him for who he truly is, beyond the walls he's built. The key is in showing him that he's enough, that he doesn't need to constantly prove his worth to you. If you want to build a deeper connection, you need to create an environment where rejection feels like an impossibility. This means accepting him as he is, without trying to change him or force him into a mold that fits your desires. Let him know that you appreciate him not just for his successes, but for his vulnerabilities, his imperfections, and his growth. When he knows you accept him in his entirety, he will feel the safety he needs to expose his true self. And while he may act tough, understand that his fear of rejection doesn't diminish his worth. It makes him human. Just like anyone else, he longs for acceptance, love, and understanding. When you offer him these things, you offer him a rare gift that not many others are willing to give. You show him that he doesn't have to fear rejection from you. He doesn't have to worry about losing your affection if he's not perfect. This reassurance is powerful. It builds his confidence and allows him to be the man you want him to be. But here's the key: don't rush the process. Men need time to grow comfortable with their vulnerabilities. Don't push them to share more than they're ready to. Instead, let them feel safe knowing that they have your unconditional support. When he starts to feel that he's not in danger of being rejected, he'll begin to open up more. And once he does, the connection between you will deepen in ways you can't yet imagine. The fear of rejection is something that all men carry with them, no matter how confident they seem. It affects the way they show up in relationships, the way they pursue their goals, and how they connect with the people around them. By understanding this fear and learning how to navigate it with compassion and patience, you can help him overcome this obstacle and build a stronger, more authentic bond. It's not about trying to fix him or change his fear. It's about acknowledging it, offering him reassurance, and creating a safe space where he can be his true self without fear of being rejected. This is the key to unlocking his trust, his heart, and ultimately, his deepest love. Every man has an undeniable urge deep within him, a need for control. This need, subtle yet powerful, often drives his actions and decisions. It's not necessarily about dominating situations or people. It's more about wanting to feel secure in his environment and his life. Control, in his eyes, equals stability. It's a way to safeguard his peace of mind and ensure things go according to plan. But beneath this need for control lies an emotional vulnerability that many men struggle to confront. It's the desire for order in a world that often feels chaotic, and the fear that, without control, things could spiral out of his grasp. When a man feels like he's losing control, it triggers something within him. It's as if the ground beneath him is shifting, and his whole world could crumble. This fear can manifest in different ways, sometimes in an outward display of dominance, sometimes in a more internal, subtle form of resistance. He may not be overtly controlling, but his actions often come from a place of wanting to steer outcomes in his favor, to protect himself and those he cares about. It's this need to control that can make him appear distant or aloof, as if he's always holding back a piece of himself from others. The truth is, this need for control comes from a place of deep insecurity. Many men have been taught to believe that in order to be respected or successful, they must always be in command of their circumstances. This belief can weigh heavily on them, making them feel responsible for every outcome, every decision, and every person in their life. When they can't control something, especially something close to their heart, it triggers fear, a fear of being inadequate or incapable. In relationships, this manifests as a reluctance to let go and trust, to allow others to step in and share the load. The thought of giving up control is terrifying because it feels like a risk, one that could lead to failure or heartache. In moments of vulnerability, when control slips away from his grasp, a man may retreat into himself. He may become distant, quiet, or withdrawn, trying to regain his footing and piece together the broken sense of control he feels he's lost. But this doesn't mean he's indifferent or cold. It's simply his way of coping with the fear that he's no longer in charge. When control feels threatened, the walls go up. He might push you away, not because he doesn't care, but because he fears being exposed. The emotional vulnerability he feels when his control is questioned is overwhelming. He becomes protective of his space, even if it means closing himself off from those closest to him. However, it's important to understand that this need for control doesn't always stem from a place of dominance or superiority. It's more about preserving his peace, his stability, and his sense of self-worth. Control is often how he defines his value. In a world where so much is unpredictable, it's only natural for him to want to control what he can. It's his way of ensuring that his life remains in order, that his goals are achieved, and that his relationships are secure. If you want to truly understand him, you need to recognize that this need for control is more about protecting his inner world than imposing his will on others. For men, letting go of control is a profound challenge. To allow someone else into the driver's seat, to relinquish a bit of power, feels like an admission of weakness. This can be particularly evident in relationships, where he might resist sharing decision-making responsibilities or showing vulnerability. He might resist expressing his emotions or asking for help, because doing so would mean giving up control. But here's the catch. Control may give him a sense of power, but it also isolates him. The fear of losing control can make him feel disconnected from those around him, leading to loneliness and emotional distance. If you want to break through the walls he's built, you need to show him that control doesn't equal strength. Sometimes vulnerability is what truly builds connection. When you allow him the space to surrender control, to trust you with the reins, you give him something far more valuable than dominance. You give him emotional safety. The key here is understanding that he doesn't want to be controlled. Instead, he craves the freedom to let go of the pressure he constantly carries. When he feels that he can trust you, that you won't take advantage of his vulnerability, he begins to release his grip on control, piece by piece. Let him know that he doesn't need to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. By showing empathy and understanding, you create an environment where he can finally exhale, where he doesn't feel the constant pressure to maintain control. In these moments, you give him the opportunity to soften, to be the person he's always wanted to be, but was too afraid to show. When you're able to take the burden of control off his chest, you allow him to be free, to feel safe enough to let down his guard and experience love, connection, and intimacy without fear. This doesn't mean he'll instantly change or relinquish all control. It's a gradual process, one that requires patience and trust. But as you navigate the complexities of his need for control, you begin to foster a deeper bond, one that's built on mutual respect, emotional security, and the understanding that control is not always necessary for love to thrive. When a man feels that he's safe enough to let go of control, he opens up to a deeper, more fulfilling connection with those he cares about, and in turn, the relationship becomes stronger and more resilient. Every man, regardless of his achievements, carries a hidden weight that often goes unnoticed, an insecurity about his success. It's not about how the world sees him, but about how he perceives himself. The pressure to constantly prove his worth can feel overwhelming, even when the outside world sees only triumph and success. The truth is, for many men, the fear of not being enough, of not accomplishing enough, lurks just beneath the surface. It's a fear that gnaws at them when they're alone, questioning whether their success truly defines them or if they are just one misstep away from failure. Behind the facade of self-assurance and confidence, there lies a deep vulnerability. Success becomes a constant measure of worth, and the moment that measure feels insufficient, it sparks insecurity. It doesn't matter how much he has achieved or how many accolades he's earned, the fear of not living up to expectations, either his own or those of others, can be all-consuming. This insecurity is driven by the belief that he's not doing enough, not being enough. No matter how far he has come, he feels like he must constantly prove his value. It's as if his success is fleeting, always at risk of being taken away by some unforeseen setback or failure. A man may look successful on the outside, he may have the job, the accolades, and the respect of others, but deep inside, he questions if he's truly reached his potential. There's a part of him that wonders if he's been lucky, if his accomplishments were a result of circumstances beyond his control rather than his own abilities. It's this internal dialogue that fuels his insecurity. The fear of not having earned his place in the world leads him to downplay his achievements, to never fully embrace the success he's worked so hard for. He's terrified of being exposed as someone who isn't as competent or capable as others believe him to be. This insecurity can show up in many ways, often in an overcompensation of effort, working harder, pushing further, always striving for the next level of success. But the truth is, no matter how hard he works, he feels like he's never quite arrived. His pursuit of success becomes a never-ending cycle, a race with no finish line. He's always seeking more recognition, more praise, more accomplishments, because the fear of not measuring up is too great. Even when he achieves something incredible, there's that lingering doubt, that voice inside him telling him that it's not enough. In relationships, this insecurity can be particularly tricky. A man's need for validation may be misinterpreted as arrogance or pride, when in reality, it's a manifestation of his internal struggle. He wants to feel valued for what he's accomplished, but more importantly, he wants to feel valued for who he truly is, beyond his success. The pressure to constantly perform, to maintain the image of someone who has it all together, can be exhausting. It's not just about the tangible achievements. It's about the fear that if he doesn't keep achieving, he will lose his place, lose his worth. This constant drive for success can push a man to withdraw, to keep people at arm's length. He may be hesitant to share his vulnerabilities or doubts with others, fearing that doing so will expose him as less than the successful person everyone thinks he is. In fact, the more successful a man becomes, the greater his fear of failure. He feels like he has so much to lose, and with that comes an even greater insecurity about his ability to sustain it. The fear of losing what he's worked so hard for can be paralyzing. The pressure to succeed, to always be on top, creates an environment where self-doubt thrives, and this doubt can chip away at his confidence. Yet in many ways, this insecurity about success can also be a driving force. It keeps him striving, keeps him motivated, keeps him pushing towards something more. But it's a double-edged sword. While it fuels his ambition, it also perpetuates a cycle of self-criticism and fear. It can rob him of the ability to appreciate the progress he's made, always looking ahead to what he hasn't accomplished yet, instead of celebrating how far he's come. If you want to understand this side of him, it's important to recognize that his insecurity is not a reflection of his inadequacy, but of his humanity. It's a product of the high expectations he sets for himself and the fear that he won't meet them. Success becomes both a shield and a sword, something he uses to protect himself from the world's judgment. yet something that also holds the potential to expose his deepest vulnerabilities. The key to helping him navigate this insecurity lies in reassurance and understanding. Let him know that you see him for who he is, not just for his achievements. Recognize the effort he puts into everything he does, not just the results. When he feels supported, when he knows that he's valued beyond his success, the walls of insecurity begin to crumble. He'll start to realize that his worth is not tied to his accomplishments, but to the person he is. The person who is loved and respected, flaws and all. At the heart of his insecurity lies a desire to be enough, not just for others, but for himself. When you offer him the space to embrace his achievements without fear of judgment, when you encourage him to celebrate his successes, you allow him to begin to heal from the insecurity that has haunted him for so long. Success should never be a measure of his worth. It should be a reflection of his growth, his dedication, and his journey. By helping him see his value beyond what he accomplishes, you allow him to experience the freedom of self-acceptance, a freedom he's been yearning for all along. Beneath the surface, every man carries a deep emotional vulnerability, a part of him that he often keeps hidden from the world. It's a vulnerability that is raw, real, and complex, yet rarely shown. He's learned to mask it, to put up a wall that shields him from the world, believing that his emotions are something to be guarded, not shared. Society often teaches him that showing vulnerability is a sign of weakness, that a man must always be strong, stoic, and unshakable. But the truth is, no one is immune to the emotional storms of life. And for many men, these storms can feel isolating, overwhelming, and difficult to navigate. The fear of being seen as soft or weak can make a man retreat even further into himself when faced with emotional challenges. His instinct is to bottle up his feelings, to pretend that everything is fine even when it isn't. This emotional guard becomes his shield, protecting him from potential judgment or rejection. But what most people don't see is that this mask often comes at a great personal cost. Behind it lies a man who longs to be understood, who wishes someone would notice the quiet struggle he faces every day. There's a part of him that craves connection, that yearns to share his fears, his doubts, and his insecurities, but he's afraid to do so because he doesn't want to be perceived as vulnerable or weak. This emotional vulnerability manifests in different ways. For some men, it's in their hesitation to express their feelings, even to those closest to them. They may struggle to open up about their worries, fears, or heartbreaks, feeling as if their emotions are something to be conquered, not shared. For others, their vulnerability may show in the form of anger, frustration, or emotional distance. When emotions become too overwhelming to handle internally, they may lash out or retreat, not because they want to push others away, but because they don't know how to process the feelings they're experiencing. They might act out in ways that confuse those around them, not understanding how their own emotional vulnerability is being suppressed, only to burst out when it becomes too much to bear. It's important to understand that his vulnerability doesn't make him less of a man. It makes him human. Every person has an emotional side, a side that craves understanding, compassion, and connection. But for men, society has created an environment where expressing emotion is often seen as a liability. They are conditioned to hide their struggles, to bear the weight of their emotions alone, and this can lead to a sense of isolation. When a man feels like he can't express his emotions freely, it makes him feel even more disconnected from others, even those who truly care for him. The truth is, his emotional vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, it is a sign of strength. It takes great courage to open up, to show the parts of yourself that are fragile and vulnerable. But opening up doesn't come easily. For a man to express his true emotions, he must first trust that he will not be judged, ridiculed, or dismissed. He needs to feel safe in a relationship, knowing that his emotions will be met with empathy and understanding, not criticism or indifference. This trust is vital, and without it, he will continue to suppress the emotions that are eating away at him on the inside. One of the biggest fears men face when it comes to emotional vulnerability is the fear of being rejected. The idea of opening up and being met with a cold shoulder or a dismissive attitude can be paralyzing. In the past, he may have been told that his emotions were unimportant or that he should man up and deal with things on his own. Over time, these messages can shape how he views his own emotional needs. He may start to believe that his feelings aren't valid or that he's somehow flawed for experiencing them. This belief can create a vicious cycle where he feels disconnected from his own emotions, unable to process or express them in healthy ways. However, when a man is able to express his emotions in a safe and supportive environment, it can be incredibly healing. It's in these moments of vulnerability that he can begin to release the emotional burden he's been carrying for so long. When he feels that he can trust someone with his deepest fears and insecurities, he begins to understand that vulnerability is not something to be ashamed of, but something that connects him to others on a deeper level. It's through vulnerability that true intimacy is built, when both partners are able to share their inner worlds, to truly see each other for who they are, flaws and all. But this takes time. It's not something that can happen overnight, especially if a man has spent years guarding his emotions. For him, emotional vulnerability is a process of learning to trust, of slowly letting down the walls he has built around his heart. It's about learning that being open with your feelings is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of strength. When he is finally able to share his emotions with those around him, he begins to feel seen, heard, and understood, a feeling that is priceless and powerful. To help him navigate this emotional vulnerability, it's important to offer patience, understanding, and support. Let him know that it's okay to feel what he feels and that his emotions are valid. Show him that he doesn't need to carry his emotional burden alone. When you provide him with the emotional safety he needs, you give him the courage to be vulnerable, to open up, and to share the parts of himself that he's been hiding for so long. Emotional vulnerability is not a flaw. It is a pathway to deeper connection and understanding. It is through vulnerability that men can heal, grow, and build relationships that are rich with intimacy and trust. So, if you are fortunate enough to be someone he trusts, don't take that trust lightly. Appreciate the gift of his vulnerability and nurture it with love and compassion. In doing so, you'll help him discover a strength within himself that he never knew he had, and a connection between you that will only grow stronger with time.